Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Rizky Aziza and my friend Susila Dihayu will explain about the dynamic structuralism theory. The development of literary theory is very rapid. The rapid development of this has started since the early 20th century. Then this development automatically parallel the occurrence of the complexity of human life, triggering the development of the literary genre. Along with advance in information technology as a whole helps provide the process of research facility and infrastructure in the implementation process. The function of literary work here is to reflect the life of the community itself. Then, the life of the people here always experience the development of the literary genre. So, that from the many literary genre, many different theories were born. Different theories will certainly have different ways of understanding in explaining and analyzing a literary work. What the meaning of the dynamic structuralism theory? The dynamic structuralism theory is part of the existing literary theory. This theory appears on the weakness of the previous theory. Dynamic theory is intended to give intensity to the intrinsic structure, which automatically forgets its extrinsic aspect. Dynamic structuralism was first proposed by Mukarovsky and Felix Fodica. According to him, literary is a communication process, semiotic fact, consisting of same structures and value. At first, is a marker that takes on meaning in the reader's consciousness. Therefore, the artwork must be returned to the competence of the writer, the community who produced it, and the reader as the receiver. Next is basic concept of dynamic structuralism theory. Mukarovsky said the groundwork for literary aesthetic in a semiotic model in which there is a dynamic relationship with constant tension between the four factors. The first is creator, the second is creation, the third is reader, and the last is reality. What is called dynamic structuralism at work manifests as a thing in its institutional structure, in relation to reality and also in relation to society. Its creations and responders. The dynamic structuralism developed by Mukarovsky and Felix Fodica tries to understand literary works based on the awareness that literary works as structures essentially have a distinctive feature, namely as a thing. The link between literary works and code and the system that underlies it is intrinsically implicit, and it is also clear to Mukarovsky that literary works cannot be understood and researched independently of other social contexts. In other words, other code and aesthetic function cannot be separate from other social functional. Next, how dynamic structuralism works. Here, the first is read literature, second is understand the element in the literary work, the third is elemental analyze, the fourth is assess and analyze extrinsic elements such as social context, history, authors, and etc. And the last is the point is to turn on the author, not only focus on his work, but also on other extrinsic elements. In Mukarovsky's approach, aesthetic experience is spatially determined by the tension between the structure of the literary works as a scene and the subjectivity of the reader, which is not absolute subjectivity, but subjectivity that depends on the social environment and the historical position of the respondent. In the analysis, there will always be an interesting dance between the global structure, namely the totality of the work itself, and the elements that are adopted into the research area. According to Jean Piaget, this is where the dynamic of the literary works appear as totality because the adoption process presupposes the characteristic of transformation and regulation so that there will be a balance between the global structure and the elements analyzed. A work, namely a literary work, is impossible and does not need to be thoroughly analyzed because the global structure is not limited. A novel, a short story, even a single phrase of a poem always appears as a subordination of genre, period, social structure, and broader culture, which in turn makes it impossible to detect the works from the sociocultural framework that produced it. Poetry, prose, and drama, as well as other classical literature, are not only analyzed textually, but are also possible in relation to their direct performance as a performing art. In this connection, structural analysis will involve at least three main components, namely the narrator, the literary work, and the listeners, so that the methodology used will be more complex, not only limited to literary research, but also complemented by field research, which in itself will also involve field research instruments.
Okay, in this presentation, I would like to explain finding and discussion of the novel. In the novel The Help by Catherine Socket, it's found that there are six themes. Those themes are categorized into two, which are major and minor. Major and minor themes. The writer described that people who live in the society come from various backgrounds. Whether it is a matter of racial background or cultural background, the story is presented in the point of view of its three main characters. The characters are Evelyn Clark, Scatter Palin, and Minnie Jackson. The story is set on the 1960 of Jackson. The story delivered to spiritually organized the daily basis activity between white people and black people. The three main protagonists, they work together to help the other mate to speak up their stories. Filled with the mistreatment that they had while working for the white families. The other five themes are categorized as minor themes, which are racial discrimination between white and black people. And the last, there are four major characters in this novel are Scatter, Evelyn Clark, Minnie Jackson, and Billy Holbrook. Hilary Holbrook stands as the main antagonist, and while the other three are protagonists. Thank you, and the next will be continued by Aziza.
Okay guys, that's all. If it's unclear, please ask. Sorry if there is a wrong word when explaining. That is all and thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.